Should you buy an existing house or should you build your own house? That's a question I get all the time. And the primary reason a lot of people are asking this question is because they're looking at the housing market. They're looking at prices, thinking prices are inflated. There's no supply out there. Why don't I just go out and build my own house? So in today's video, I want to talk about the idea of buying existing construction versus buying land and building a home. Now, for purposes of today's video, when I say existing construction, we're actually going to be talking about new construction in that same element as well. And I believe there's a lot of opportunities coming in new construction depending on where you're located in the US. And while new construction is different than existing construction, we're going to talk about them kind of in the same category today, as a lot of these new construction homes are already constructed, even though they're brand new. It's different than buying land and building a home. So when we're using comparisons today, we're going to be talking about all of the above so that hopefully we can explain the pros, the cons, so that I can guide you in the right direction and hopefully make the best decision for yourself. Now, before we dive into that though, I want to take a minute and ask a favor. If you find any value in my videos at all, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, and also feel free to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on everything real estate related. Over the last couple of years, we've seen house prices go absolutely bananas, with many markets out there appreciating 30 to 40% in just a 2-year period of time. And because of that, housing affordability has become a major problem, on top of us seeing record low interest rates and then interest rates moving up pretty significant in a short period of time, which is making affordability even worse. And because of that, there's a lot of potential buyers out there wondering, should I just try to buy land and build a home versus buying an existing home? Is it any cheaper? Well, what I want to do is start with the pros and the cons of building a house, and then we'll compare it to new construction. So the pros of building a home, as many of you know, is that you get to customize your house. You get to make the house how you want it. You get to make the plans. If there's something specific in that property, you get to design it. And therefore, that's a huge plus to being able to build your own property. On top of that, there's little to no competition, right? When you're going out buying land, building a home, depending on where you're located, if you're here in Southern California where I'm located, it can be difficult. It can be very competitive because there's not a lot of land available to go out and just buy and build homes. But if you're in the Midwest, if you're on the East Coast, possibly in Eastern North Carolina, like where I'm from, there's a lot of available land out there and there's less competition to be able to go out and buy that land, which means that it can be a little bit more affordable. On top of that, building new construction, you're going to have less maintenance in the property. Everything is going to be new in the property. On top of potentially having some built-in equity on that property, if you're able to find a contractor that can do it at a reasonable cost, because typically new construction is going to sell for more than existing construction in most markets out there. So if you're able to build it at a cost less than what a builder would actually be able to build it, then chances are you're going to have some equity once that home is done. But that's essentially where the pros end when it comes to building your own home. But the things I want you to think about are the cons, the negatives, and not because I'm Mr. Debbie Downer here, but it's because I want you to know what you're getting into if you're planning on going that route. Some people are saving money with the idea that, hey, I'm going to go build a house, when in theory, if they considered all the things that we're about to talk about now, they might be looking at existing construction. The first main negative with trying to build a house is that you have to buy the land. Chances are you're going to have to buy the land. Unless somebody's able to give you the land, you're going to have to go out and purchase that land, which means that you're going to have to finance that land in most cases, unless you have the cash to buy it outright. And financing land can be very, very difficult, on top of requiring large down payments. Now, if you have cash, none of those are actually problems, but I believe a lot of people out there that are thinking, I want to build a house, are thinking that they're just going to be able to go out and find a piece of land and finance it and be able to finance the loan to build that house in addition to that. Well, it's actually going to require multiple loans. You're going to have a loan for the land in addition to having a construction loan, which means that you're going to need a loan to get the money to be able to build that property. And with that said, many banks out there aren't going to to let you borrow 100% of the funds to build that house. You're going to have some of your own money in order to build that property. It's going to require a down payment. It's going to require some of your own funds to get the bank to lend you some of those funds. So it's going to require a lot more cash up front to be able to build a house than it is to buy an existing house. And on top of that, you're going to have to find a contractor to build that property. And what I found as a real estate agent, selling real estate for nearly 20 years, right now is about the busiest I've ever seen contractors. Because homes went up so much in value, people are borrowing from their properties, they're adding to their properties, they're remodeling properties, which is giving contractors a lot of work out there. So it's very, very difficult to find a good quality contractor out there that's not super busy, that's willing to build a property at a reasonable price. And because of that, it makes it very, very difficult, for one, to find a good contractor. Secondly, to find somebody that isn't going to charge you an arm and a leg to build that property. And what I found oftentimes in this business is that good quality contractors, they're great contractors, but they're typically not great business people. They say they can do things, they say they can stick to certain timelines, and a lot of them overpromise and underdeliver. And I'm not saying that's all contractors out there, because it's not. There are great contractors that are able to stick to timelines, stick to budgets, do everything exactly like they say. Unfortunately, I haven't come across a lot of those contractors. I've come across a lot of the contractors that overpromise, underdeliver. Their time delays are usually off. Their costs are usually off, which makes it a huge headache to deal with some of these people. So understand, when you're building a property, this is something you're going to have to deal with. You're likely going to be talking to this person a couple of times a week, if not a couple of times a day, when you're going through the construction of building a home. And another thing you're going to have to deal with when building a home is the time it takes to permit, the time it takes to get plans on a property, the time it takes for inspectors to come out and actually inspect the property so that you can get to the next stage of construction. In addition to having to deal with any potential supply delays. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a backlog of homes that are under construction but waiting to be completed because they can't get certain materials to be able to finish those homes. So in some cases, you might be building a home and they can't get garage doors, they can't get appliances for whatever reason. And so when you're building new construction, these are things that you have to account for. In addition to having excess money for overages, that sort of thing. On top of that, in California, it costs around $100,000 to break ground on a new construction property because of what it takes here with all the regulatory fees, everything that California requires to build a house. Now, I know a lot of states out there don't have that problem, but here in California, that's a major problem. And you have to factor that in if you're considering building new construction in a state where they make you jump through all of these hoops, dot all these I's, cross all of these T's in order just to get the process started. So with that said, we've talked about the pros of building a home. We've talked about the cons of building a home. Now let's talk about existing construction here for just a moment to kind of give you another side of things to think about. Buying existing construction is essentially opposite. All the pros are the opposites of the cons of building a home, if you will. And let's start with the idea that you can leverage your money a lot more in buying an existing home, because there's loan programs out there that will allow you to finance up to, say, 97% of the value of a home. You only need about 3% down to buy a home. Whereas building a home, you have to get the land, you have to get the construction loan, in addition to having money for overages, all of that stuff. Whereas buying an existing home, you don't have to worry about that stuff. So with that said, it's usually less expensive to buy an existing home, on top of having shorter closing time. You don't have to deal with the idea of supply delays or the contractor not getting the job done in time. So when you buy a home, you typically have an escrow time period, say a 30-day period. And I would say more often than not, the home closes somewhere around that 30-day period. So you don't have to worry about when your home is going to be completed. But with that said, there are some cons to existing homes as well. And that's the idea that there's not a lot of supply out there, which means there's not a lot of property to currently choose from.